Hi fam, my name is Paul and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I smoke my 3-2-1 baby back ribs. I'm going to be using my smoker here and then I'm going to also go through all the prep process, all the supplies and tools that you guys will need to make some mouth-watering ribs. So hope you enjoy. Alright guys, so I want to show you what kind of tools and supplies I'm going to be using to smoke these baby back ribs. Start off, make sure you have a good coal chimney to be able to light the charcoal. I'm going to show you how to use that in a second. When I usually smoke any kind of meat, I like using blocked wood, and I really like using fruit trees or fruit type of wood, especially if I'm using any kind of pork or rib product. So today I'm going to be using some cherry wood. I do like using the bigger blocks of wood, and the reason why I have it in a bowl right now is eventually I'm going to pour some water, sprinkle some water over it just to kind of get the wood a little bit wet. It just kind of produces a little bit more of the smoke. I highly suggest that you guys use at least one, if not two, good grill mitts. We're going to be dealing with whether we're holding the chimney smoker or the charcoal chimney or just grabbing the ribs, pulling them out. It's really good to have a comfortable protection of the mitt. And then probably most importantly, make sure you have a good drink to keep you company while you are smoking the meat. Today I'm going to be having this interesting coffee IPA. It's actually not that bad at all. Next I'm going to tell you guys about the meat I plan on using. So I got these baby back ribs from Trader Joe's. A lot of times if you're buying a rack of baby back ribs like this, you're going to be paying anywhere between 18 to 22 bucks. A lot of times I find that these ribs compared to something like Kroger or Albertsons or anywhere else, they just have a ton of meat, ton of flavor, and they smoke really well in the grill. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the smoker that I use. This is a Dynaglow. It's in the shape of like a meat locker of sorts. So if I wanted, I could have whole different layers of different types of stuff if I wanted to smoke at the same time. Right here is where I'm going to be putting the coals and then eventually putting the wood on there to create the smoke. And then you can see that it filters to the left and then all the way up and out. I usually like to put the ribs, depending on how many I'm doing, all on usually about the center of the part. It might look well, get that leaf out of there. So it might look a little dirty in there, but to me, this gives it that flavor. Any good smoker has had tons of years of flavor, and then every once in a while I'll definitely clear off the pans using some olive oil and stuff, but for the most part I don't clean out the inside of the smoker. It gives it that good flavor. My old smoker, just so you can kind of see some different models, excuse me Ron, now I don't use this anymore except just to light the coals, but this has the more wide look to it, so the coals would hypothetically go in here along with the wood, and then filters to the left where I would put the meat. But again, I don't use this thing anymore except just to light the coals, so that's why it looks in such large disarray. So the charcoal I'm going to be using today is the Cowboy brand lump charcoal. I also like to use Kingsford, especially if I can find the type of wood that I'm flavoring it with. So I'm going to show you an example of a bag that I'm not going to be using today, but this one's a hickory bag, but like I already told you guys, I'm using cherry wood. So sometimes these charcoal have the wood embedded into the charcoal, but I just couldn't find any cherry, so I'm just going to be using my regular lump charcoal today. This kind right here. So I've got my chimney all prepped. What I like to do is put some brown paper bag at the very bottom as my starter when I start to light it. And what I'm going to do is be pouring the charcoal onto the top over here. I do not like to use lighter fluid. It just kind of adds an unwanted chemical flavor to it. So if it takes sometimes me trying to light the bottom a couple times, I don't mind doing that as opposed to using any kind of lighter fluid. So I've got the charcoal dumped inside the chimney. What I'm going to do now is use these long stick matches to light. If I can do this in one try. light the brown paper bag that's at the bottom. Again, sometimes this takes a couple tries. I'll light one side and then I'll usually light the paper on the other. And this will begin to get the coals hot and ready to be dumped in the smoker. Now, it will usually take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes to get all the coals lit. I like to have them all lit properly before I put them into the smoker. So this will take about 10 to 15 minutes possibly. So I want to quickly talk about the dry rub, the seasoning that I'm going to be putting on the ribs today. So this is a Jack Daniel's rub that I got from Ace Hardware. It has a lot of the garlic salty flavor to it that I really like on the ribs. I'm also going to take the ribs. I don't do any of the trimming with the fat. A lot of pros do that, especially if they're entering competition and stuff like that. But one, I'm a little lazy, and two, I like as much stuff on these ribs as possible. But I am going to cut them in half, and there's two reasons for that. Number one, as I kind of showed you in the way my smoker is set up, is that it's more tall than it is wide. And then the second reason is once we get to the barbecue phase of this, usually Scarlett and I like two different types of barbecue. So I'll slather one in one type of barbecue and I'll slather the other for whatever Scarlett chooses. So this is what the ribs look like for me after I've seasoned them. Again, you should still be able to see a lot of the meat, especially with something like ribs or maybe a pork butt. I wouldn't go over the top with the seasoning because the meat itself already has a very savory type of flavor. Whereas something like a brisket, to me, it's always good to over season. It helps with the bark as well as getting that salty flavor into the brisket. But I do all sides. I mean, you can see I season the bottom, the sides, the top, every little bit. All right, guys, so as you can see, I've got the coals nice and hot. They're all lit. I have prepped my smoker so that the area where I'm going to dump the coals is just going to be able to go right in there. I've got my grill mitt on. I'm going to go ahead and just take this, bring it over, dump it in. A little falls out to the bottom, no worries, I can always just stomp on it. Go ahead and push it in. I am not putting in the wood yet. I make sure that the vents on the side are all the way open because right now what I want to do is jack up the temperature. This grill comes with, it kind of gives you like the sweet spot between 200 and 275 depending on what you're cooking or where you want the needle to get to. I'm going to try to get it to around 200-ish, 225. So when that happens, we will come back. All right, so I'm getting close to the temperature that I'm going to want my smoker to be at. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is take my ribs and place them inside the smoker. Go ahead and pop this open. Again, I haven't put the wood in there, so there's not going to be a whole lot of smoke yet. Take the ribs carefully on one. I want these to cook pretty evenly, so putting them on the same rack, since I cut them in half, it makes it pretty easy to do. Then I go ahead and shut it and lock it. So already the temperature is kind of picking up a little bit. It's at the point where it's gonna get a little too high. I don't want it to get to 250. So what I'm gonna do before I even put the wood in is I'm gonna take the vents, I'm just gonna close them about halfway. So the more airflow that you have going through the smoker, the hotter the temperature will get inside the smoker. So this just kind of prevents as much airflow getting through. I'm gonna go ahead and open this hatch right here. I'm gonna go ahead and take my wood that I have sprinkled water and it's kind of been soaking on. And again, I like taking these big chunky pieces and I just toss them in there. And so this is what adds really the smoke to the smoker. What we should see coming up soon is some smoke starting to come out through the top, especially once that wood kind of catches the vents. I'm actually going to open the vents up just to make sure that the wood catches. And in a second, we should see some smoke coming out of here. So, as you can see, we've got some nice smoke coming right out of the top there. That means that the wood is lit. It is doing its job. If I didn't put any wood in there and I left this just with charcoal and kept putting charcoal inside, it would cook the meat, but the wood gives it, this cherry wood's gonna give it that smooth, almost sweet flavor to the bark, especially on the outside, and kind of help cook the meat all the way through. So the reason why I call these 3-2-1 ribs is because for the first part of this, I'm gonna be cooking it in the smoker anywhere between 200 and 250. I'm gonna try to keep it actually closer to the 200 side. So as you can see already, this smoker, it kind of heats up really easily. So I'm going to shut the vents and try to bring this temp back down. But I'm gonna cook at it completely uncovered. The ribs, just have the seasoning on them for 3 hours. Then after 3 hours, I'm gonna wrap them in a foil, and I'm gonna show you how I do that and cook it for another 2 hours. Then I'm gonna take them back out of the foil, put some barbecue sauce on them and cook them for 1 more hour, and then they will be done. Ribs are really the only type of meat that I actually smoke where I don't use a thermometer in the meat. Anytime I do a brisket, anytime I do a pork butt or a shoulder, big slabs of meat, steak, anything like that, I'm very religious about using a meat thermometer to help tell me when I should take it out of the smoker. But for something like ribs, especially when I'm doing the 3-2-1 method, the time is really going to be the key. So it's only been about a half hour or so since I first put the ribs in. Smoke's still going great. Every half hour or so I like to peek in, kind of see what the coals are looking like. If it's starting to get low, then what I usually do is just grab some more coal. Just take a handful or so. Pop this open. And then I just toss some of the pieces in. And then go ahead and close it back. The wood is still going strong, so I don't need to necessarily put more wood in there. It's just gonna crank up the temperature more. Still trying to kind of keep this temperature down. And this is the thing about smoking meat, is that you have to do all these things to try to limit the temperature. You don't want it too low, too high. I've got the vents almost all the way closed, about 2/3 closed, to try to limit. And this chimney, actually, the way that this smoker is set up is if I push this all the way down, that increases the airflow even more. If I pull it up a little bit, kind of decreases the airflow again, just to kind of lower the temperature even more. So just some different stuff that you can do depending on what kind of smoker you have. But like I said, I'm only about a half hour into the 3 hours that it's going to be in there. So we're about 2 hours in. I wanted to give you guys a little perspective and look here. So the temperature is still way higher than I would like. And again, this is just kind of what happens with when you smoke meat, is that managing the temperature, it's tough to do. I have found that even though I absolutely love this smoker, a lot of times it burns hot, and that's just kind of what I gotta constantly battle. I've put the vents almost all the way closed. I've only got them about 1/4 of the way open. I just threw a fresh log in there. So I think that you can see it kind of already heating up. That is part of why this temperature is going. But I wanted to give you guys a look at what the meat looks like. And so a lot of times I try not to open up the main chamber because it does bring the temperature down, but I don't mind doing it because right now my temperature's running a little hot. But this is a good look for about 2 hours in for these ribs. They're dripping.
That grill come into my face and make me hot.
Okay, well then stay away from the grill. Growing with safety. But you can see the fat and the meat is starting to marble at the top there. It's not getting burnt at all, but there is some serious dripping going on. That's a good thing. It'll get fixed once we throw it into into the foil. But I just wanted to give you guys kind of a look at what it would look like about 2 hours in. We'll check back in once we get to 3. All right, so it's been 3 hours now. I'm gonna show you guys how I wrap the ribs for the 2-hour session. So pull open the smoker. You take a look inside. You can see we've got some browning going on, which is great. The fat is marbling into the meat. I'm gonna take just one of these and show you how I wrap it instead of both of them. Because again, I like to do this separately just because me and Scarlett kind of have a difference of how we like the seasoning in the barbecue. But I take this, I'm gonna go ahead and I put it on the foil. So just so you know how I wrap this, we have 2 sheets of tin foil going this way, 2 sheets of tin foil going that way. I'm gonna go ahead and just start to pull these up, kind of make a little bed, boat, almost if you will, for the ribs. And I'm gonna take a can of cider. This is from Locust Cidery, a rosemary plum. I like to either use ciders or I like to use hard seltzers, or sometimes just regular flavored seltzer water, but something that has a fruity flavor with the ribs that it's just gonna soak in during this 2-hour session. So I'm only gonna use half of the can for these ribs, and then what you're not gonna see is me pouring the other half into the other foiled ribs. So I go ahead, I just pour it straight over it. I mean, hypothetically, this is gonna be soaking into the meat. It doesn't necessarily need to fill up all the way around the meat by any means. I go ahead, wrap it as tight as possible. With this stage, again, the smoking part of the wood is not as important. So at this point, I'm gonna kind of actually crank up the heat to try to keep it at around 225. Because it's wrapped so tight, and I can kind of feel it's cool on the bottom, it's warmer on the top because of the cool cider. But at this point in time, I'm not worried about flavoring it with smoke. It's wrapped in the foil. I go ahead and put that in there. And again, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing for that style of ribs. One thing I wanna point out, so this is gonna be in there for 2 hours. And I'm only gonna be using regular charcoal for these next 2 hours. So if I need to put more fuel in there, I'm not gonna be using any more wood because the smoke flavor isn't gonna be affecting it while it's in the foil. I'm only gonna be using the charcoal. So I'm gonna be starting the next 2-hour session. To confirm, I've got both set of ribs wrapped up nice and tight with the cider, letting the meat soak into it. This is gonna be sitting in the grill for 2 hours. I'm gonna try to keep the temperature at about 225. So, you know, I just opened it up. It's showing at 200 right now. Hopefully it'll increase to about 225. Keep it around there, maybe around 250, 225. And like I said, I'm gonna keep that in there for 2 hours. For those of you keeping track, second beer of the day, we got a Bloody Mary pickle beer. For those of you like something spicy, something tart, the Martin House Brewing Company does a great job with their sours and with their spicy beers, so go ahead and check it out. 2 hours, we'll check back in. Again, no need to put wood into the grill part from here on out. At least for the next 2 hours, I'm going to only be putting in charcoal. All right, so it's been 2 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and pull these ribs out. I've got my trusty heat protected mitts on. This one. Carefully take it out. Go ahead and close this. I'm only gonna show you guys how I sauce one of them, but you carefully undo the foil. It's gotta be hot, so if you need to keep your mitts on, feel free to do so. You're not gonna need to have the foil any longer, so if you need to rip the foil apart, There ain't nothing wrong with that. You take a look at this so far, so you can already see that cooking in that cider brine, the meat is starting to pull back from the bone. That's a great sign. It smells amazing right now. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and sauce it, taking that Junkyard Jim's bourbon sauce. So this is my own one, and I'm just going to drizzle it on the top. Not worried about spillage that much. I'm not gonna absolutely coat it. I'm not one that's gonna be big on slathering it evenly all over the place. I just like to give it a good topping. And then, all right, so I've sauced the top of it like I showed you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and place it back in the smoker, out of the foil. I'm gonna do the same for this one on the left here, and I'm gonna sauce it in the honey whiskey for Scarlet's ribs, and then I'm gonna leave these on for an hour. So again, this would complete the 3-2-1 method of the smoking. I'm also gonna put a couple more chunks of the wood in there to get some more of that smoke flavor into that barbecue sauce. But again, only for about an hour, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take them off. One thing I want to stress on this last hour, you don't have to go the full hour. So if you feel like yours has been running hot all day, kind of like how mine has. Now the temperature has kind of dropped inside the smoker, so it's not quite at the 200 mark that I'd like it to be, but it's not terrible. But I mean, it's still, you've got a lot of good smoke coming out. I'd put some new wood in there. But if you open it up, especially like after like 15, 20 minutes, and you see that it's starting to blacken in any sort, the ribs have already been cooked through. Your meat is gonna most likely at that point in time been cooked through and easily be safe enough to eat. You can always throw a thermometer into the meat if you've got one to triple check, but this is just you're adding a little bit more of that smoke flavor to it and letting the glaze of the barbecue sauce fit in there. So again, if you don't need to go to the full hour, no worries. But again, it just kind of is for the 3-2-1 name of the method. All right, so this is the finished product. We've got the honey whiskey on the left, the bourbon on the right. Seeing the meat just pulled back from the bone there, this is just a great sign that it cooked all the way through, tightening up on there. If I wanted, I mean, I'm barely pulling this rib off, and there's hardly any meat sticking to it. All that meat right there, that's just gonna be a pure joy biting into. But that's how you know that these ribs were cooked well. I mean, the bone should just pull straight away from the meat. Super juicy, super flavorful. Hope you guys enjoy. Take care.